Afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jeffrey Hammond. I am head of Worldwide ISV Product Management Transformation at AWS. What that means is I get to spend a lot of my time working with product teams that are our customers as they design experiences. And as you can imagine, a lot of those experiences involve using generative AI as part of their product strategy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I'd also like to introduce Suraj here.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Wonderful to see you all. My name is Suraj Krishnan. I'm the Group Vice President of New Relic on the Engineering Telemetry Data Platform. Go ahead.
Okay, so Suraj is going to take us into a little bit of a deeper journey into an individual company's product experience with respect to applying generative AI. I'm going to start out a little bit more broadly. As I mentioned, one of the things I get to do is spend a lot of time talking with a lot of different customers, and so I want to give you some insight into how we see many different software companies approaching generative AI and how they're using the technology as they make that part of their product strategy. So let's start by talking about the art of the possible. In the conversations that I'm having when we're looking at use cases, one of the things that we tend to see is that most software companies look at two different types of use cases and treat them very, very differently. So let's start with the optimization journeys, which focus on operational improvement of how the company itself is effectively delivering the products that drive its business. With respect to operational improvement, you often see investments in things like customer self-service, in improving revenue operations, how effectively you sell your products, in creating the content that is part of the marketing strategy, that's part of the marketing go-to-market capabilities for the products that you're selling. We are seeing generative AI being used as part of lead development operations and as part of overall software product delivery. Now, we often see companies that are just getting started with generative technologies focusing on a lot of these use cases, even though the return that you see from these investments actually tends to be a little bit lower than the alternative. Now, why is that? Because many of these use cases tend to be fairly low risk. And as you're just looking to understand what you can do, how generative AI can be used as part of your efforts, it's always nice to have a human in the loop while you're getting started and reduce some of the risks that you might have if your customers were all of a sudden to be exposed to some challenges, some hallucinations, if you will. So let's look at a couple quick examples of that. I'm going to start with one from Amazon, and this is one that you may not immediately think of, but generation of synthetic test data. If you're not familiar with Amazon One, it's the service that we have that can read palm prints and check you out of a store. Now, to reach the level of resilience, of mission criticality required to make this a viable technology, you literally have to be able to test on millions of palm prints. Can you imagine the time and the effort required to go out and find 1 million of those palm prints, capture them, make them available as part of your test suite? Pretty significant amount of toil to make that happen. By being able to generate synthetic test data, they were able to significantly reduce the amount of effort that it takes to generate the test data body that is required to reach the level of resilience that they need. Now, do you have a test data issue? I was recently working with a customer of ours that's in the financial services space. One of the things that they mentioned to me was their customers want to make sure that their infrastructure can scale to millions of customers and potentially tens of millions of transactions a day. And so they need to build the infrastructure to be able to set this up, execute these tests, and tear it down to prove to the enterprise customers that they're now selling to that they can do this. That's a test data generation problem along with a DevOps and automation problem. Ideal sort of application for generative technologies with synthetic test data. Another example here, evidence speeding development with Amazon Q Developer. The ability to make your own software development practices more effective is pretty significant. What we have seen in some of these examples, and you'll notice as I go through the presentation that there's a lot of links at the bottom when you come back from reInvent and these presentations get published up on the website. You can click on those links and go dive deeper into any of these use cases. So what we see with these sorts of efforts focused on internal operational improvements, things like 25% faster development, up to 40% developer productivity increases, 37% code acceptance rate by the humans, by the developers, 12% increase in the automation of repetitive tasks. That's something that as you learn how to do it internally becomes really, really important when you think about embedding these technologies in your own products as well. In the case of Evident, being able to modernize legacy code in minutes and reducing overall operational cost in terms of the cost to develop, the cost to sell your own products. Now, while that's interesting, the far more strategic use case from the product team perspective that I tend to have deeper dives and work with teams on is embedding these technologies in the products that they sell as part of their overall product strategy. And so some examples of where we see that, investing in differentiation. You take what already makes you special and make that even more special by applying generative technologies. Generating additional growth through new products, things like chatbots or co-pilots. Streamlining user experience is a big one. There's a phrase that I see used a lot, toil reduction. Where can we reduce the amount of toil that our customers' customers have? And how can we use that toil reduction through automation to generate more differentiated experiences for their customers? We'll see some examples of that in a second. Improving automation and then summarizing operational data or even lighting up dark data, which I'm now starting to see a lot of companies beginning to focus on. So let's look at a couple examples here. Appian's an interesting one because when they first started to work on their semantic search, which is one of the common use cases that we see folks using generative technologies for, they did that with their own documentation, their own customer support materials. So think of that as, one of those operational use cases. But as they learned how to do that, they took that information and they inserted it into their product, and they further reinforced that with data from the product itself to create a more robust hybrid search capability that helps customers make choices, in their case, around how they're going to apply data and analytics successfully. Another example, Alida. If you're not familiar with Alida, they serve customers that have products, often brick and mortar products, clothing, retail, and when their customers comment on the products and what they like about the products or where they have issues with the products, Alida will summarize that information and create insights out of that information and make it available to the customers, the product managers at Alida's customers, so that they can identify potential trends, potential issues, potential challenges with customer satisfaction. That ability to rapidly summarize that is a whole lot of toil that just wouldn't get done otherwise, because the amount of information that the product leaders would have to go through to understand what's maybe not quite right from the customer's perspective. Another thing that we're starting to see is investment in what I call executable artifact generation, and SnapLogic's a good one. It's easy to think about executable artifacts as code. I can generate Python, or I can generate Java, or some other programming language. But if you have a very strong meta model or strong set of how your data is typed in your product, the ability to both generate and consume that as an executable artifact can create really powerful outcomes for your customer. So in SnapLogic's case, that executable artifact is the pipeline that the product is then able to execute and able to speed up the rate at which they integrate into multiple other organizations. Now, you can put these various techniques together into incredibly effective product strategies. Greenhouse is a really good example of this, and you can read in the link about how their CEO has talked about how they're using generative technology. But it starts with things like generating job posting. That's natural language generation, NLG. It moves to generating test and interview questions. That's natural language generation. But it gets more sophisticated, assessing the intentions behind a resume that's been submitted. That's natural language understanding. Being able to improve DEI outcomes or to anonymize resumes are techniques that lead to better hiring outcomes is a good example of applying responsible AI practices to the investments that they're making. Natural language question and answer. That's for the hiring folks that are making decisions to be able to very quickly get information about who they're trying to hire. Good example of toil reduction, NLQ. And then finally, the ability to automate the scheduling process of hiring, to create appointments, to make it easy to remove all that toil from the hiring process is a really great example of executable artifact generation. So why is this important? Because for every product that you might have, you can start to ask these questions. Where are there opportunities to do NLG? Where are there opportunities to do NLU? Where are the executable artifacts in our meta models that our products are constructed around? How do we do that in a responsible way that automates tasks, reduces toil, and lights up dark data? Now, if you're thinking about how we can embed these technologies and products to drive outcomes, what we are seeing with folks that are relatively far ahead with this journey and are making these significant advances is that, according to McKinsey, up to 15 to 40% of their incremental economic impact can be added because of these technologies. We're also finding that already 1 out of 20 companies is attributing about 10% of an increase in earnings before income before income and taxes to the investments that they're making in generative AI. Okay, so that's an example of some of the art of the possible in what's already going on, specific examples right now. So, how are these ISVs doing it? What sort of investments are they making? So first of all, from a skills perspective, it starts with the skills that we believe that everyone needs. The obvious one is the ability to do good prompt engineering. And we think that most C-levels should be able to write decent prompts, that they can think about how that might impact the products that they're designing. But there are complementary skills on top of that. We need everyone to be able to ask questions such as, does this answer look correct? Can they engage in critical thinking? And is there trying to understand whether or not they're delivering a valuable response? Other widespread skills, the ability to turn data into value, the ability to re-engineer and optimize processes, that toil reduction, task automation capability, and the ability to implement changes like this through successful change management processes. Because it's a significant disruption, if you can't manage those sort of processes, we find that a lot of companies will actually start to struggle. We also find that one of the ways to think about how you're going to do this is to think about a community of practice or center of excellence model. And the center of excellence model is one that we commonly see in organizations like HR or finance. There are dedicated organizations, but everybody in the software company needs to know enough about finance, needs to know enough about HR to make sure that we don't do bad things, that we report properly on our income. So the center of excellence makes sure that those best practices are incorporated into the entire organization. We see something like that happening with generative AI right now, where you will see a core team that is responsible for many common services, like different LLMs and a multi-model router, and the ability to connect individual data stores, or even to bring data into a single data lake that can be used as part of development efforts. And then those technologies get embedded using a shared services model out into individual product teams. From a design perspective, There's also the potential to embrace different design paradigms when you're thinking about how you're going to take these technologies and embed them into your products. And I want to give you two very different ones right now. Neither is wrong. They just have different consequences in how your customers are going to use the investments that you make. I'm going to start with Canva. Canva takes what I would consider to be an immersive approach where they infuse generative AI capabilities into their hero product. So I'm going to play this for about a minute, and what I'd love to see you do is count the number of places that you see a generative AI capability. It's just about a minute. Okay, let's do a quick show of hands here. Who saw more than 5 places that there were generative AI capabilities? Most of the hands are up. Okay, how many folks saw more than 10 places that there were those capabilities? Probably about half. Yeah, I usually count somewhere around 10 or 11 there. But the point is instead of there being a separate experience where the customer goes to do generative AI, it just becomes part of the product and it enhances the product itself. Now, why is this important? When you think about pricing the products that you're creating, at some point you're going to have to justify the costs that your generative AI investments are requiring. And so, are you going to do that on your hero product? Are you going to do that by trying to sell a separate product? And how is that going to impact your success when you start to put together your go-to-market strategy? So, very, very different experience. This is one that's probably a lot more common that we see quite a bit. Co-pilots, branded special co-pilots, Purple, or Salesforce Einstein, or if you're in the accounting space, Xero has one called Just Ask Xero or JAX. And with the co-pilot, it's much more closer to a pair programming experience, or I've got kind of an assistant that is helping me out. Those experiences tend to be a little bit more textual in terms of the interaction. I ask the co-pilot to do something for me, and it goes and does it, and there's a conversational aspect to what I'm doing. So as you're thinking about how you're doing this, take a look at your own customer base and say, which of these sorts of experiences is going to allow me to deliver the capabilities and the differentiation that I want in my products? Another thing that we are finding as you are designing your generative AI experience is very, very quickly organizations run into problems with the data that they want to use. If you think about it, if you want to differentiate with generative AI, there is differentiation in your data because that data is unique. It's hard for your competitors to get. And if you can help your customers use their own unique data, you can help them differentiate with it. You probably heard me a couple times use this phrase, dark data. Customer I've been working with whose customers have potentially decades of construction plans, schematics in file cabinets, and all of those have potential applications as they're engaging in new designs for new customers. How do they get that data and make that valuable so that they can take the advantage of the benefit from all the designers at the customer that have come before the current crop of designers, CAD technicians, that sort of thing. So if you want to be successful with Gen AI, you need to master your data and get it in a place where the technologies themselves can use it. And to do that, there's a number of capabilities that we find that software companies need. They need the capability to be able to collect that data, to clean it. You know, if you want to talk about hallucinations, if you've got dirty data, you're going to get hallucinations from that. You need to be able to annotate it and teach the generative AI technologies what it means, especially if you're trying to use it for executable artifacts. You have to teach it that grammar of the things that are in your products. You've got to be able to version it. You've got to be able to make sure that you've got the correct lineage on it. And only then is it well set up to deliver on your generative AI strategy. Let's talk a little bit about some of the technical skills that your organization is going to need to have to be successful here. One of the things that you need to think about doing with respect to your data is to establish the tenets that you are going to use as you're pulling together this common data platform, common data lake, whichever strategy you decide that you want to put together. The first thing that you need to do is to start to treat your data like a product itself, and this is something that I'm having frequent conversations with. Let's go back to the financial services industry. Think about all the data that a financial services trading platform acquires and how that could be used by other organizations. But really basic question, are they set up to use that? Are they set up to even sell a data product? Do they even have ownership over the data, or is it the customer's data? And how is that specified? Those are the sorts of issues that have to be solved. Respecting the privacy and the consent and the confidentiality of customers where the customers own that data. Understanding which data sets can be used to drive different perspectives and different products. So, you know, things like weather data is a good example. I was having a conversation with a customer a couple weeks ago that works in the ag space. And if you think about all the data that their customers get and the potential to be able to make informed decisions off of the results of the weather in the agricultural industry, it's significant. And then how do you create a governance regimen that doesn't say no, but says yes with the right qualifications? Now, for software companies, there are also some particular wrinkles in your generative AI strategy that you have to be very good at and figure out. Commonly, this data privacy issue and solving it and understanding who owns what is one of the first issues that organizations have to get over. But very closely after that, the ability to be able to use more than one model is something that comes up in the conversations I have a lot. I'll give you an example. I was working with a customer in Australia a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that was very important to them was getting to a certain level of accuracy on the use case that they were trying to create, because if you couldn't get to that level of accuracy, it wasn't going to be useful to the customer. Well, different models allowed them to hit different levels of accuracy in that situation. So one size does not fit all for every individual use case out there. And it's one of the reasons that we're seeing more advanced software companies start to create these multi-model infrastructures as a set of common services for their product teams. Flexibility is another one. We see for prototyping, using things like Bedrock can allow organizations to make progress very, very quickly. But as you start to scale and things like price become important as capabilities become embedded in products, sometimes we will see organizations move to something like SageMaker and a lower level approach to give them more flexibility in terms of how they control the costs of operating at scale. It's good to have both of those options on the table. And we'll talk a little bit more about price performance in a few minutes. So, generally, what we are seeing ISVs do is to start up at the top of this triangle, using things like prompt engineering to try to drive the use cases that they are trying to successfully achieve and get the level of accuracy. But from there, it's a short step to something like retrieval augmented generation, where you can use data to be able to improve your accuracy. be able to improve your differentiation. But as you go down this pyramid to things like fine-tuning generative AI models or even training your own AI models, cost tends to go up, complexity tends to go up, and as a result, while we do see that there are lots of software companies that will do that, it tends to be something that you need to think very, very carefully about, because if you start there, you may have a lot of trouble with the balancing act of a successful generative AI use case. I think that the start of this triangle is accuracy. And so when you're thinking about an individual use case, ask yourself, how accurate does the model need to be for your customers in order for the customers to consider that a successful outcome? Does it need to be 90%? Does it need to be 95%? From there, you can start to say, what are we going to have to do to get to that level of accuracy? How much is it going to cost? And how fast can we make it? If you make it fast and you make it cheap, but it's not accurate, it may not prove to be very valuable and very useful as part of your product strategy. So all of these are things that you need to be able to balance, and that's where multiple models, multiple techniques, multiple approaches can help you balance the different aspects of scaling a generative experience. What we generally find is that fine-tuning can improve your accuracy. Pre-training can also improve your accuracy as well. And from an inference perspective, you also need to think about how much context are we going to need when we're executing our inference, because that's going to drive costs up as well. So even though it's great that these models have huge context windows now, if you're going to balance the costs right, you have to make sure that you're not going hog wild with the amount of context that you're putting in to the individual inference. That said, you may find that there are situations where you can't make that triangle balance today. That doesn't mean that you should throw the idea away. What it does indicate is maybe you need to put it off for a couple months or just start some internal prototyping and understand how you're going to do it, because what we're already seeing is over the last 2 years, the cost of inference with generative LLMs has declined precipitously. And there's no reason to expect that we won't continue to see that same level of cost decline. So what you might have with a use case that is not financially viable at scale today might be different in 6 months or 12 months from now. Okay, I'm going to finish up my remarks. There are a number of things that we do from an AWS perspective to help you work through these decisions. Whether it's all the low-level infrastructure you need to build your own models, I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about that this week, or whether it's the tools to build the organization with the shared services that your product teams can use to build their own use cases. Or the higher level use cases that we've already built with things like QDeveloper or QuickSight Q that are there to be embedded in products for things like natural language query or natural language generation or executable artifact generation. But it's not just the products. The other thing that we offer as part of the ISV segment for our customers is programs to accelerate this journey. Things like the Generative AI Accelerator, which is a 1 or 2 day event with AWS experts that helps you understand specific use cases that you want to work with to identify how you would potentially push those forward and get executive alignment around them. We also offer experience-based acceleration, which is an agile, immersive interaction with cloud capabilities and that can accelerate business value around the generative opportunities that you have. There's also the Generative AI Incubator, which allows you to leverage our own AI ML experts in brainstorming sessions to identify and leverage the solutions that we have to do your own toil reduction, to do your own automation. And of course, there are self-paced things like the Builders Labs or the self-paced labs that we offer if you want to do it on your own. So with that, I want to thank you very much, and I want to turn things over to Suraj to talk about their own journey at New Relic and some of the challenges as they tried to balance those various needs. Suraj?
Thank you. Okay, so you heard the different use cases by different companies from Jeffrey, right? So what I'm going to talk to you is where the rubber meets the road. We will talk a little bit about the journey of New Relic, and in terms of how we are using Gen AI internally and how we are using it in the product. So before I go into that, just want to probably give you a little bit of a background on New Relic. I'm sure all of you are aware of New Relic. We created the APM, the entire market segment, but we are a completely an AI-first observability platform. And if you look at it, there are three important things that we do here as part of a platform. The first one is intelligent monitoring. This is where we get all of the meld data from anywhere it resides, on-prem, cloud, or any type of cloud. We bring all of the data from your applications, third party, we bring in all of that, and we build the actual data platform that provides the actual intelligent response to our customers. And then finally, we provide insights that drives from the data that we currently have, and then we provide value to all of the persona that you're seeing there on the slide. Now, the most important thing that you will see is we pump in about 7 petabytes of data per day. Billions of events are getting pumped into this platform, right? And that's how big the platform is, that's how big the infrastructure of New Relic overall platform is all about. Now, this sets the context in terms of the things that we do from an observability standpoint for our customers. And we have about 85,000 customers. They use New Relic in a mission critical way, right? In terms of running their systems, incident management, scalability, reliability for their own mission critical applications. Now, that's the background of the company. Now, in terms of Gen AI, right? So there are two important aspects that I want to talk to you about. One is how New Relic has used Gen AI internally to improve our operational efficiencies across New Relic, right? So we are about a 3,000 plus, right, employee company overall, right? So there are some of the important things that we have done is we have started on our journey like almost 2 years ago when people didn't talk about agents. That's when we started to work on that. And we started a very simple approach. We did not want to talk about POCs. We always want to talk about proof of value, right? The important thing is you can use Gen AI for any use case. In fact, there was an interesting cartoon that I saw this morning. Hey, here is an autonomous napkin that instead of you wiping your face with a napkin, the napkin is actually automated. Now, you don't need AI for that. Yeah, it can do the work that it needs, but there is a cost to all of that. So our first important thing was to how do we improve developer productivity, because developers are the scarcest resource within the company, and how do we improve developer productivity? So we want to reduce all the toil. Now, if you look at developer productivity, right, overall, some of the things that developers do is certainly code reviews. This is where the biggest bottleneck in any engineering company go. How do you really tackle that? We're always waiting for a principal engineer, senior engineer to show up. It takes a couple of days, sometimes it takes weeks for somebody to show up, right? How do we tackle that problem? Second problem is, we have all these beautiful engineering standards, we have all these coding standards. Now, we cannot have a junior developer join the organization and then kind of learn all of this from a senior developer, wasting the time. How do we make sure that we have these standards are implemented automatically, and then there is a way to capture that. The third one is also about a code generation. Hey, is code generation really good? And how much work the engineers need to do on top of code generation to happen? And where is the value from a coding perspective? And we found the best values in test generation or in terms of refactoring some of the old code, right? And the important thing for us is, okay, we have all of this, we can use Gen AI for some of this, but how do we measure the value that this has actually produced? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we have it. I have a graph to talk to you about it. Now, here, if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, you see P1, P2, and P3. They are the levels of engineers. P1 is someone fresh out of college, like probably 2 years, and then we have P2 engineers who's got like 4-5 years, then we have P3 engineers, right? And our hypothesis is that the Gen AI is going to be most useful for the newer engineers rather than a principal engineer type, right? So we actually did an optimization. We had a cohort of just the P1s, just the P2s, and the P3s. We calibrated them pre and post Gen AI, code generation and test generation and implementation. And you see the graph that you see. On an average, we saw that at about 15% increase in productivity. across. So this is a very critical part in terms of what we want. Now your use case may differ, but this is a very important thing. This is what I talk about, the proof of value in terms of what we want. And the second thing is in terms of the agent. Again, this particular picture I put together like probably about 14 months ago when agent was not a thing, but today everybody talks about an agent. So this is a concept where you have one agent, because our view even at that time was there are going to be multiple agents, and then each agent is going to have their own domain expertise, and you can't have like 50 agents running in your company. And for your end user, you're going to have only see one agent that comes out of it, and then other agents need to talk to. Like for example, we now have an integration with Amazon Q, right? So that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to have there are other products like Salesforce and other things that we use. All of them are going to bring their own agents, and we actually talk to. But the end user is going to talk to one particular agent. That is the Nova agent. That's what we have. That is the New Relic agent that we have in-house. Now, if you look at it, the agent kind of like does two things here. One is an agent that runs in Copilot mode, and an agent that runs as a free form, in the sense that you invoke an agent in some cases and ask the agent to do something. That's one use case. The other use case is that where you don't have to invoke. As you do your work, it's in your workflow and it automatically gets invoked. Like for example, you do a pull request and automatically the agent will come in and do a code review and give you output out of that. Then you finish that, and that's the way to kind of like do it. It's very hard to look at the simple use cases. You always call an agent and then you ask for something like what we do with ChatGPT, right, or with other things, right? But that is good, but I think if you want to improve the maturity of your product, then it needs to be in the workflow. So one of the most important things that you all will realize is calling a chat agent is the simplest of the agents that you have. What is going to be changing for all of us is how our day-to-day workflow in terms of how we do things is going to change. You're going to see the entire workflow, not 100% of the workflows is going to be managed by agent. There is going to be an AI agent that's going to do some work. You're also going to have a human in the loop as well in terms of the process. And one of the key things what I can tell you is we have this concept of hero work in engineering, right? So these are some of our engineers who are on call for a week for that particular org, because we have about 100 teams, and one team wants something done by certain things, and there are n number of activities that they do. We classified all those activities, all those tickets, and we said, hey, can Gen AI really help with like taking out like 5 of the use cases? So this is when an actual engineer comes and asks a question, automatically the agent will pick up, and it's not a synchronous communication, it's an asynchronous communication, in the sense that the agent will acknowledge the engineer, go back and do the work and come back. It can take 5 minutes, it can take 1 hour, or it can actually go and create a pull request for another team, and once that gets approved, it comes back and says that it's done, right? So that's the kind of work that I'm talking about here. Now, the third thing is also doing incident management. So and as I said, ours is a mission critical environment, and incident management is really, really critical. The more we learn from our prior incidents and more we prevent incidents from happening, the better we are as a product, right? So that's where we, it's a simple chat ops agent that we have in place, but what it does is it can correlate the alerts and create an RCA automatically and provide you n number of things for you to choose. And if you want that to be implemented, you have another agent that can actually go and implement it. So you have different models that you can have for your different use cases, so that your costs don't get blown up. Right? If you're going to use, one of the standard, whether it's a bigger large language model for everything that you do, it's going to be cost prohibitive. You are better off using humans rather than using, an LLM to actually do the job. And you will realize that as you do some of these things. Now, this one, cloud cost optimization, and this is something that's been very, very useful. I'll come back to this, but here is how we monitor all our cloud costs. So everything that we are using in the cloud, it's tagged by team, tagged by resource, and we use Gen AI to look at the common benchmarks, and as there is an anomaly, that particular team will get this alert. Now, when we started this was alerting even for $1 increase. The engineers were just pissed off, right? And then we have to kind of like tune that stuff. Hey, that's not material enough to kind of like do that. So let's see. Okay. So that's the cause, that's the thing. The last one is if you're a big power, AWS user, you have convertible RIs. And convertible RIs can be really be creatively used because you can convert based on your workload, based on instance types. So we use AI a lot in that space, and we have saved like $4 to $5 million a year just by using convertible RIs to making sure that we bin pack appropriately and we can buy and sell convertible RIs as part of the platform. Right, and in all of this is a lot of experiment that been done, and then kind of like put this to production, right? So these are some of the things that we have done internally, right, in terms of developer productivity, in terms of incident management, in terms of cost management, and those kinds of things. I want to touch base a little bit in terms of how are we using Gen AI in our product. Now, as I said, our platform is a pretty huge, humongous platform, and probably we are running the largest or one of the largest Kafka clusters in the world. Biggest streaming platform is what we have. And then we have our own proprietary database called as a New Relic database, and that is all backed by S3, and it's got a relational database. It's a very unique architecture because speed is very important for us, right? Customers, they, as I said, we pump in 7 petabytes per day. Just imagine the kind of queries that can come, and customers are not going to wait after the query. And we have our own SQL-like language called as NRQL or NRQL as we call, right? And customers are used to it, they love that, right? But how do we get new customers who don't want to learn NRQL? What do we do, right? Can we use natural language to kind of like do some of those things? Now, before we go into that, this is our product, right, in terms of AI, how we use AI from a platform perspective. There are 3 important things in our platform. Starting from the bottom is where you collect all the data that comes in, all the data that gets ingested, and the knowledge platform that we built. On top of it lies the platform of intelligence. This is where we have a probabilistic engine and a deterministic engine. Right, deterministic engine is you give an input and you get an appropriate output. That's a deterministic part. But the probability is you don't know what the output is going to be. You get a probability of what the output could be, and then you can correlate your deterministic engine with the probabilities engine and other way around, right? And then on top of it lies the platform as action, which is where we have anomaly alerts, recommendations that come out of it. Again, I talked about customers new customers who don't have to learn NRQL anymore. They can use language, simple, a natural language query, and internally NRAI will translate that with appropriate prompt engineering to get that. Now, just think about this, and then at the back end, we also have integration with Amazon Q. So if you have an Amazon, if you are an AWS customer, automatically all your resources can all be queried through one agent rather than using multiple agents, right? In terms of what we are actually trying to accomplish here. Now, this is our platform in terms of how we see, so the platform of record and the platform of intelligence, and then a platform of action is what we have overall from an AI perspective. Now, this is NRAI, New Relic AI monitoring. As you go through the screen, so one of the things that we do is we help customers in terms of monitoring their AI in action, and this is, we're talking about performance again. Jeffrey talked about performance, cost, and then once you have a model, don't think that it's going to become static. You have to continuously refine that because there are better models coming in, costs are going down, better prompt engineering can be done. You have to iterate over the solution. So this is not like you build and you forget it, but you have to build and this is what tells you, hey, has the model actually deviated from where you need to be? What's the latency that your users are experiencing, and what is the drift? Can you actually compare one model with the other? And that's the AR monitoring that comes out of the box. There's another interesting thing that we do as well here, which probably I don't have. I can come back to this one here. Let me go back. Right. In terms of incident management and in terms of RCA, right? So one of the problems that you'll see with observability is you get a lot of alerts, and then you will find out that when you have an incident, the alert that you're supposed to really have in place does not exist. You have all the other alerts, and this is a problem, right? Because you can't anticipate all of that. One of the things that we do from an NRAI perspective is first of all we try to optimize the alerts so that the false positives and false negatives are kind of like compressed, so you get high quality alerts. Then automatically the agent can actually go and set up alerts without any human interference and have those alerts put in place. Then when that alert gets triggered, then you can actually have another agent do an RCA in terms of the potential issues that can happen in your environment, looking at your current status of your system-wide events and also looking at your historical events, what's happened, and then suggest a couple of solutions that you can actually go and pick and implement it. And it can summarize the action for you. And then it's up to you as a user whether you want to implement it or with a click, you want the system to go and implement it. Same thing with change tracking, right? And you do a certain number of things as you deploy your systems. There is a change tracking marker that gets captured in the system, and during an event you can go to NR platform and say, hey, from this time to this time, what are the things that's changed, and it will give you the actual changes that's actually happened, and also tell you that this could be a problem that you can face. So there are a lot of different use cases that can be put to use. So one of the things that you will learn as we go through this hype at this point is there is a lot of value that these things can generate, but what is that you need to go after, right? Every ISV, every company has a set of use cases that's a higher priority use cases, right, in terms of what you want, right? You want to go into it. So that is the thing that needs to be kept in mind, because there are 100 things that you can do, but do you have the resources and the bandwidth to do all of that? And you pick and prioritize the one that you really need to really work on. And that's something I want to spend some time on in terms of what have we learned on all of this. First is a very important thing to understand is proof of value is going to be very important. Don't stop with proof of concept, right? So you can over engineer things, and that won't be cost impactful overall. The second thing is you should be able to measure the actual value that comes of all of these things, right? And that's going to be a critical thing in terms of what we want. And then do not always think about Gen AI. The classical machine learning approaches can come and help, because most of us have not even utilized the classical machine learning approaches. So one of the things that we learned in terms of our capacity engineering, because we have a cellular architecture for our platform, and the cells need to be at a certain capacity, and hey, when do we need to add another cell? When can we decom a cell, right? That is where the classical machine learning comes into the picture a lot more easier and more impactful and less costly, rather than using a Gen AI model. So do not forget that classical machine learning is something that you can still use for your forecasting purposes, rather than going this approach. Then you have to experiment and prototype. The more you experiment and prototype, the more you're going to drive innovation in your organization. And these prototypes need not go into like months. It probably takes like maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Some of the prototypes can take just 3 weeks, and then you iterate on top of it. So iterating is something that you need to be open to. So this will not be a finished product on day one, right? And then make sure that you scope the use case to actually what you want, and don't keep it too broad. Then you're going to really disappoint a lot of folks, because there is an AI opportunity, and there is an AI outcome that needs to come out of it, right? So, and then there is a potential that so every company has a certain revenue interest that comes out of AI. Some it's just productivity, some it's actual cost that needs to be brought down, some it's actually increase in revenue that needs to be shown, like go to market and those kinds of things. AI is actually revolutionizing a lot of those aspects, as you saw with Canva, right? The use case that you saw, a lot of the marketing that can be generated out of the box. Now the question is, somebody has to, again, the biggest hype about AI is that AI is going to take all of the jobs. That's not what it is. People who use AI will take jobs of people who don't use AI. That is what is the classic thing, because as humans, that's how we evolve, and this is what we have as a capability. So this is not going to take out what humans can do, but this is going to empower us and take out the drudgery of a lot of the things that we're doing in the place. Then the other thing that we're going to to emphasize is context, right? And context is all about, again, building a model, a foundation model is super expensive. Most companies can't even afford to build a foundation model. Fine tuning is also expensive. That is also something that I would not do until I really, really want to have a very specialized, domain model that I want to use. I mean, having a RAG implementation, and there's so many things that has changed in the in the RAG world in terms of a knowledge graph or a graph RAG, which actually sets the context to your pre-trained model. That works beautifully in most scenarios as well. Right, so try out all of those areas that's actually cost effective and brings you results pretty quickly, rather than taking on a huge project that's going to take like 6 to 12 months to implement and millions of dollars down the drains. So those are the things that you need to keep in mind. Again, these are some of the things that we have learned, and we are still learning, right? As we are experimenting, we have another 40 to 50 use cases that we are trying, and probably 15 of them are going to be so powerful that we can actually productize it. And then some we will learn and may not be mature enough to actually do it, and some will take time for us to actually implement it. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeffrey.
Thanks a lot, Suraj. It's really great to see that even though that's your own unique journey at New Relic, that the themes that we talked about were there, the themes of operational versus product embedded, really there. The idea of toil reduction for your customers and reducing the amount of time it takes to identify new alerts, and to really take the work that is not necessarily the rewarding work and begin to reduce it. The level of additional automation, the need to balance the cost and the performance and the accuracy. So, whatever your products are delivering to your customers, think about how you can start to use some of these themes to chart your own successful, market-leading, great generative AI strategy. What are your high priority use cases, the ones that drive value, and how can you make sure that you're focused on those? Start with what's unique about your business, with what's unique about your process, with what's unique about your data, and build on those to identify those high value use cases. Which things do you think are going to be commodity in the future, so you can not have to worry about spending time building that capability yourself? You can just get it from us or get it from any other provider. The models themselves, they continue to get better, they continue to get cheaper. Do you really need to bear the cost of tuning or building your own models, or can you avoid doing that? Really start with prompt engineering and RAG first to make sure that you can't make that work for your high value use cases. Don't ignore your data. Understand what it's going to take to get the data in a format that it can be consumed by the generative technologies that are out there, and make sure you've got the tenets established that rewards the organization for putting that data in a consumable format. And then, do you have the right people? I heard you say AI platform, and I'm assuming that you've got some resources that are aligned with that core platform that gives capabilities to the rest of the organization.
So there is a mix of organic and inorganic skill building that needs to happen. So I think that's very important. I think, Jeff, you alluded in one of your slides to talk about how our workforce need to be AI enabled, right? So there needs to be a certain amount of internal training that every employee needs to have, or every engineer needs to go through. But at the same time, you may have to get some specialized expertise, right, that's not available in-house, and then gradually grow that area as well.
And you can start with some of these common techniques, like, you can be a finance major like me and understand what natural language generation is, or natural language understanding, or natural language query, or executable artifact generation is. You can teach the decision makers in the business parts of your organization about those techniques to start asking the questions that are going to help them identify those high value use cases.
And one other thing I'd say is GenAI Competency Center of AWS is phenomenal. I think if you can make use of them, just make the maximum use of that as well.
That's great to hear, and we love to work backward from our customers, our software companies, for sure. So with that, I want to thank you very much for coming today. If you are not aware of the resources that we offer software companies, I would encourage you to take a look at the AWS for Software Companies link that this QR code resolves to. I'll leave it up there for a second. Hey, Suraj, thank you very much for doing this with me today. It's been excellent. We'll hang around if there are any questions, so we appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.